Hey everyone, welcome back, and let's write some more Leetcode today. So you're probably wondering how I got here. And so let me just tell you a short story. I didn't expect that I would be recording a video today because I thought I had already recorded today's daily Leetcode problem. I expected it to be this one, a map of highest peak. And this is a relatively simple, when I say relatively, it is a medium problem, but relatively simple breadth first search problem for like a medium problem. It's called a multi-source breadth first search. And today's problem is actually similar to that. Conceptually, it's also actually a multi-source breadth first search, but this one is obviously much more complicated. It is a hard problem. And if I were to just show you like the solution code here, it probably wouldn't make a ton of sense just by telling you that this is multi-source BFS, because the difficult part of this is the tricks, and that's what I'm going to be trying to spend this video on. And I think it is a reasonable solution that should be understandable, even though it's definitely super, super difficult to come up with something like this. And the reason I mentioned this problem is just because it's also going to be the daily problem, I think probably in a couple days. But if Leetcode was a little bit smarter, they probably would have put this problem before they put this hard. I don't know exactly how they're picking these daily problems. It seems very, very random. I guess it's worth mentioning, yeah, I'm sitting in my car right now, but now let's get into the problem. So the idea here is that we're given actually a matrix. It's a two-dimensional matrix. It's called the height map, but it actually represents something that's three-dimensional. So like each of these values corresponds to a position in this grid, and the value itself will tell us the height of that position. So like this corner over here we can see is 1, this one is of height 3, this one is of height 4. So it's somewhat similar to the first trapping rainwater, like the premise of the problem, but the solution is going to be a little bit different. This kind of reminds me of a similar Leetcode problem that's like a two-dimensional one. In this problem, though, we are trying to figure out how much water this entire structure could hold, aka like what's the volume of water it could hold. Like obviously the corners or any of the edges, the borders, will not be able to hold any water. Any water that lands on top of them will kind of slide and fall right off. But I think the two-dimensional version of this problem, which is this max area of island, at least it's like similar. It kind of totals up the area of all of the islands and then tells you which one is the maximum. So we're not like literally getting the area of all of the islands, but this is like the two-dimensional version of today's problem, which kind of gives you a little bit of intuition that maybe a graph traversal is going to be relevant to this problem because we're looking at it top down and each of the cells has some height associated with it, and we need to know for each cell how much water would it be able to hold. Now obviously it's kind of hard for me to like draw this out right now, so I'm just going to be using a picture that somebody had in kind of the discuss section. And so this is like the top down view of the grid that we are given. I think trying to figure out the correct approach for this problem is probably the hardest part, because there's so many ways to tackle it. Even if you can kind of think that maybe a graph traversal might be useful, if you just start at a given position, like this one that I'm kind of hovering over right now, and then you start a traversal from it, DFS or BFS, to suppose calculate the total area of water that a given section could hold. We might look at this one and say, okay, it'll be able to hold some water possibly, but the hard part is we don't know how much water until we kind of reach the border. And we have to verify that there is a kind of containment for that cell and that the containment itself has a height larger than that cell itself. And you can try to think of a solution that will do a traversal from given cells, and trying to make that efficient where you don't visit the same cell multiple times is going to be difficult. And I don't think it's actually possible. It might be, but there is a different solution, which kind of involves inverting the given problem that we have. So instead of starting with a cell and asking, okay, how much water could this hold? Let's kind of start with the edges, because we know that none of the edges are going to be able to hold any water because they're not contained in any way. Okay, but after we go through all of the outer cells, which cells should we be looking at then? Now, I think a problem with that approach is if we were to traverse like the entire border first and then go to some inner cells, those inner cells might be higher than the ones that are actually on the border. So we don't necessarily know that that inner cell would be able to hold any water. The height definitely matters, and the height of the border definitely matters as well. So this is where it gets really, really difficult, in my opinion. We are going to do, like I said, a multi-source BFS. I'm going to try to explain like what we're going to do. Then I'm going to explain a little bit of like the intuition, and then I'm just going to get into actually implementing the code. So I think, to be honest, this is harder for me than I thought, like just sitting in my car doing my laptop. But the idea here is that we want to kind of use the edges, but we're not going to visit the entire border initially. We're going to initialize our queue. In this case, it's going to be a priority queue. I'll talk about why, but we're going to initialize our priority queue with all of these bordering elements, everything that is on the side. We're not going to add them to a regular queue though. We're going to add them to a priority queue. Specifically, it's going to be a min heap, not a max heap. So what we're going to do is we're going to end up going through the smallest heights on the border first. And then for that node, it's going to be kind of like Dijkstra's shortest path algorithm, where then for a given node, suppose that one, we're then going to add all of its neighbors, its 4 directionally connected neighbors, up, down, left, right. And right now it doesn't actually have any neighbors, but let's say the second one that we pop, which is this one over here, it does have a neighbor, which is 3 directly below it. The left and right neighbors, they don't count because they are already added to the heap. There's nothing above that one, but below it, there is a 3 now. So now we're going to continue the algorithm. And from now our queue, we would pop the smallest element. I think it's again going to end up being 1. So then you can see that after we popped the 3 elements, the ones were popped, and then this is remaining. We would continue the algorithm popping the smallest that's available to us right now, which is a 2. Now I'm going to finish by explaining like what the rest of the algorithm is going to do. And then I'm actually going to end up implementing it. And then maybe after that, after we've kind of gone through and actually gone through every like step, maybe then it'll be easier to kind of understand the intuition behind this problem, which in my opinion is the hardest part. I think this algorithm is very different from most algorithms, especially like graph algorithms as well, like Dijkstra's algorithm. This is not a standard Dijkstra's algorithm. So the remaining steps are 2 things. One, we are going to be maintaining what is the maximum height that we have popped. And the other thing is, as we actually pop given nodes, we are going to then, for that given node, calculate exactly how much water is going to be stored there. We're going to do that by using the max height that we already popped. So to kind of just go through the rest of the pictures here, we would end up popping, like the 3 ones that we popped, the max height that we had at that point was also 1. So we would not be storing any water on top of any of those cells. And then the 2s that we end up popping, we won't be storing any water there either. And at that point, you might be wondering, well, if we have a min heap, we're going through the heap, obviously in increasing order, and we're maintaining what the max happens to be. Well, then isn't that calculation always going to be 0, where we take the max height and subtract from it the current height? If we're going through the heights in increasing order, that should usually be 0. And it usually is going to be 0. But every once in a while, as we kind of expand our frontier with the breadth first search, we might be adding some nodes that are already contained. And for those nodes, the calculation could be non-zero. And that's what we care about. Okay, now I'm going to go through the code instead of like typing this out, like crouched over here and having you hear like the loud keyboard sounds. I'll just kind of talk through this. So we're first just getting the dimensions of the grid. And then we have kind of 2 steps here. The first step is going to be initializing the minimum heap with all of the cells that are on the border. So what we're doing here is we're just going over the entire grid. And I mean, we didn't need to do that. We probably could have just gone through the first row, second row, or rather the first and last column and first and last row, but we're doing it this way. And here in this if statement, what I'm checking is either the row is the first row or the last row, or the column is the first column or the last column. And if so, then what we're doing here is pushing to the minimum heap a pair of 3 values. The values are the height of that position as well as the coordinates of that position. And then here, what we're doing is just marking it visited. We're setting it to -1 just to mark it as visited. We could have used the hash set for that if we don't want to modify the input. Implementation-wise, this is a little bit more simple, but usually I will code it with the hash set. This time I'm just not doing that. The second part is probably the more complicated part. What this is doing is prioritizing the smallest heights first. This is the breadth first search. This is the multi-source breadth first search. we're initializing the queue or the heap with multiple values, and then we're running a breadth first search on them using a min heap with some kind of priority. So we're going through the heights in increasing order, and we are maintaining what the max height is so that then we can do the calculation. So we have one variable for the result. We have another variable for the max height, which I initially set as -1. I think 0 probably would have worked as well. And then at each step, what I'm doing is popping from the min heap. I get 3 values, the height, the row, and the column. I first update my max height potentially by just getting the max of it. And then I do the calculation I was talking about. This is the special calculation. Take the max height and subtract from it the current height. Usually this is going to be 0. For the first iteration of the loop, it's probably going to be 0 because we have some height. It's going to be whatever number that height was. And so that's what the max height becomes. And then we subtract from it the current height. And so after that, there's nothing too crazy going on. For that given node, we will go through the 4 directions, the 4 potential neighbors that it has. We'll just make sure that the coordinate is in bounds and that it hasn't already been visited. If it has, then we can just continue to the next iteration of the loop. After that, if that's not the case, what we will do is take this neighbor, I call it neighbor row, neighbor column. We'll take the height of it and add it to the min heap along with the coordinates of it, and we will then mark that coordinate as visited. And then after we've popped everything from the heap, we will return the result. The overall time complexity of this is going to be, I think, n times m multiplied by, I think, log of nm, because that is the heap push and pop operation. So I want to run this code for you just to show you that it does work. I want to have it all on the same screen, but I don't think that's going to be super readable. You can see running this code, it does work, and I promise you it's pretty efficient, but I think understanding it intuitively is not super easy. I think this calculation probably makes sense to you, but I think the number one question that you probably have, and I definitely had, is this. How do you know for sure that when you do visit a cell, that it is actually fully enclosed, that the max height that we are maintaining is actually enough for us to know the water that's going to go in a given position? Well, first, I want to confirm to you with 100% certainty that none of the outer cells are going to ever have any water contained on top of them. And the reason for that is because those outer cells will always be traversed in increasing order. So by the time we do visit like the 4 that's on the edge, our max height is definitely going to be 4. Part of the reason for that is because we initialize our heap with all of these elements at the exact same time. Had we not done that, then the algorithm definitely would not have worked, because we could have possibly gotten to an outer cell and we might have stored some water there, and that's not what you want to do. Now, the other thing is this. If we do have like an inner cell, the easy case is if the inner cell has a height that's larger than anything on the border. Well, at that point, we'll definitely probably not put any water there. I think the hardest question to answer is, how do you know that like a cell like this 2 over here is going to get a water of 1, which it should, and not a water of 2? Well, in this example, if we were to have popped this 4 and then popped the 2, then it would have gave us the wrong calculation, that this could store 2 water when it definitely can't. But that's not going to happen in this case, because if it did happen, that would mean that we popped this 4 and we popped like whatever was on this side and that side. And those were also less than or equal to 4. If they were greater than 4 and like all of them were greater than 4, that seems like it would be impossible, because then we definitely would have popped the 2 at some point. So like there is some intuition, and I'm probably not doing the best job that I could usually have done like at my computer. But I think even then, this is not honestly easy to understand. I think the intuition is very hard. I think the proof aspect of this is very, very hard. As I'm editing this, I quickly realized that maybe like the easiest piece of intuition to make this understandable would be something like this. Consider if we got to like one of these inner cells, maybe the 2, and the max height that we had seen up until this point was maybe a 4 or maybe even like a 5 on the side here. How do you know that the height of water that could be stored on this spot is going to actually be the difference between the max, which is 5, and then 2? How do you know that it's the max? How do you know that something bordering at the top of this or at the bottom of this isn't smaller than 5? Well, I think it is theoretically possible that like other parts of that could be smaller. But in that case, this one would probably be as big as 5 or bigger than 5, because if it wasn't, then wouldn't we have popped like the 3 that's on top of here, and then popped the 2, and then popped the 4 or the 5? The fact that this guy still hasn't been popped yet, sort of like in a proof by contradiction sense, kind of proves that, well, its neighbors must be either greater than or equal to 5 in that case. So like you can try to think of counterexamples. I think that'll actually help you get closer to the intuition, because you won't be able to think of a single counterexample because this does work. It's just not easy to prove that it does. But anyways, let me know what you thought of this video. Hopefully it was at least a little bit helpful and it kept my streak alive, and maybe yours as well. But thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.